What is your identity? Identity is who you think you are in the world in relation to other people and to the world itself, the material world. And identity is something that is largely, if not entirely, constructed. Now, that's not to say we aren't born with certain innate um, propensities or talents. We certainly are. In Tantra, they're called samskaras. Samskaras are, to use karmic language, the cumulative karmic wave from past lives that have led to this current birth, and all those karmas or actions in the past that have created this body-mind identity that we now consider as ourselves is further developed in this current life through more actions, some of them intentional, some of them happening to us by other forces from nature or from other people, things that we don't have direct control over. So why is it important to think about our identity? Well, the purpose of tantric practice, or really any spiritual practice in Eastern philosophies, is realization of the nature, the true nature of self. And that self is spelled with a big S, not the body-mind, evident, very easily seen and thought about self, but a self that is not obvious just as a casual look. So Western psychology in the main deals with this phenomenal self, the body-mind organism, and the emotions and thoughts, traumas and so on, that occur within a single lifetime. Some transpersonal psychologies will deal somewhat with past life concepts, various degrees of success. I really don't know. But the psychology of Tantra or Vedanta, or Buddhism for that matter, although there are some philosophical differences of ways of expressing their ideas, all aim to pierce through the appearance of self, the superficial self, to something deeper. Now, in the ascetic systems like non-dual Vedanta, Shankaracharya's non-dual Vedanta, Mayavada Vedanta, they'll say, oh, you're not the body, you're not the mind. Okay, that's a very extreme position on which to begin a spiritual practice. I'm not saying it's not true. In the ultimate sense, it is. But it also isn't the whole truth. And what the tantric system, which combines both ascetic and ecstatic methods of spiritual striving, says you are the body, you are the mind, and you are what is more than that as its starting point. So that simple difference of starting from a point of negation versus starting at a point from affirmation really sets the tone of a whole way of approaching life and spiritual practice, that ultimately defines, this ascetic Mayavada from Shaktivada or Kashmiri Shaivism, any of the tantric schools that affirm that we are everything, not negating what we are. So in Tantra, you start out by just understanding where your identity comes from, how it develops. And that happens through analysis of this body-mind phenomenon. Now, it's, tempting always to think of this as a thing, the body, the mind, as if they exist as a single phenomenon, when in fact they're more like a waterfall. They're a process. The body is a process of chemicals, electrochemical processes. The mind is also a process. Now, there are certain patterns to these processes, certainly, and those patterns are what we tend to identify as ourselves. I like chocolate ice cream. I don't like roller coasters or things like this. We have a certain physical, genetic background. All of these things are patterns of these processes that give the illusion of a stable identity. But if we look at the extreme points of our life arc, as infants, which, have a certain body-mind existence, as adolescence, much different than as a mature adult, and then finally as an old person, if we live that long. These are, the infant has very little in common, except at a kind of genetic level, with the old person that he or she becomes. Because of the immense changes that happen in these patterns. So even though the patterns at some deep genetic level, are more stable, at the macro level, they're quite change quite a lot in the course of a life, if we look in that. So both Hinduism and Buddhism say, well, what is it? What is our identity made of? And if you start with the physical, they talk about 5 organs of action and 5 organs of knowledge as sort of summing up the physical organism. 5 organs of action are hands, feet, tongue, anus, sex organ. And the 5 organs of knowledge: eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and sense of taste. So, and skin. Sorry. Eyes, ears, nose, skin, and taste. Yeah, 5 senses. So tantric ritual works with this body-mind identity, these organs of action, organs of senses, through ritual to shift first your attention and then your actual identity from the external personality to deeper levels of experience of self. And the intermediate stage between this body-mind organism and the universal consciousness that everybody says ultimately we are, everybody, Eastern systems, I should say, is what in Tantra are called deities. These archetypal, larger than life, as it were, divine personalities that embody symbolically a greater sense of self. And so it's like ascending a staircase to get to the roof as opposed to jumping from the floor to the roof. You begin with understanding this identity, this way that we think of ourselves as a body-mind, and then shifting from that to this greater body-mind that we call the deity, and then from that to the essential identity, which is pure consciousness. And that process of ritual is at once simple and direct and also a little bit difficult because it requires a certain amount of mental focus developed through meditation to sustain the visualization necessary to make that shift actually occur. So that's a brief introduction into the concept of identity as it occurs in